All right, this is 8th grade for lesson 20, module 7 on truncated cones. Truncated is a big fancy word for something got chopped off. Okay, so if you think about this, this was a cone at one point. You can kind of draw this out. And it was truncated, which means it was cut off. All right, and when it's cut off, we have to kind of solve it a little differently. So this opening exercise, look at this bucket here. It has a height of 9 inches. And the radius is at the top of the bucket, which is up here, and that's 4 inches, all right? Describe the shape of the bucket. What is it similar to? And what do you think the volume might be? So these are going to be your own personal answers here, so just go ahead and fill that in. All right, let's look at example 1. So now we have a truncated cone, and what you want to do is go ahead and make the cone. And I'm going to make the cone by extending out a length for this side and this side, and then connecting it with a right angle here. So I make 2 triangles, one small triangle, one larger triangle. So when I go to solve for this, I'm going to set it up like a ratio. I'm going to say this 4 to this 10 is something plus that something plus 8, all right, which looks like this. 4 to 10 ratio will give me some value, because this is x up here, and I'm going to take that x and then add it to the 8 to get a total height, all right? Now, when you get this far, you're going to cross multiply, all right? And I get 10x here, and here I get 4 times x plus 8. So this is 10x equals 4x plus 32. I'm going to combine my x's, so I'm going to move the 4. So I'm going to subtract the 4x from both sides. That cancels, giving me 6x equals 32. I'm going to divide by 6 to both sides, and x winds up being 5.3 repeating. So this little part right here, we're just going to say is 5.3. Now, to find out the whole thing here would now be 8 plus 5.3, which would give me 13.3. So now I'm going to find the volume. I'm going to find the volume of this smaller cone, and then I'm going to find the volume of this larger cone. And then I'm going to subtract the smaller cone off of it, the volume of it. That's the truncated part, and that'll leave me with whatever the volume was here on the inside. All right, so it's going to look a little something like this. Here we go. I'm going to say volume of the small cone. And that's going to be V equals 1/3 pi r squared h, using the formula that we discovered in the last lesson. So 1/3 pi. My radius here is 4 because we're talking about the small one. So this is my radius. So I'm going to say 4 squared. And my height, I just found it. It's right there. That's the 5.3. So this gives me 1/3 pi times 16 times 5.3. I'm going to combine those two. So I'm going to say 1/3 pi. And that gives me 84.8. And 3 can't go into that, so I'm just going to say 84.8 over 3 pi. All right, there's one of my answers. Now I'm going to find the volume of the larger cone. Okay, so the volume of the larger cone, we're going to say volume equals 1/3 pi r squared h. 1/3 pi. Now I'm going to use this one down here as 10. So I'm going to say 10 squared times my height. Now my height's not just the 8, my height's the whole thing. So I'm actually going to use the 13.3. This gives me 1/3 pi times 100 times 13.3. I'm going to go ahead and combine those two. And I get 1/3 pi gives me 1,330. So I'm going to combine that together. So 1,330 over 3 pi. All right, so here are my two volumes for the small cone and the large cone. And now I'm going to put these together by subtracting them. So I'm going to say 1,330 over 3 pi, take away 84.8 over 3 pi. Now this is also why I do not change these into crazy decimals, because I wanted my denominators to be the same when I divided. If you have big decimals, then you can get a very strange answer. So keep it in fractional form if the 3 does not divide completely into it. Keep it as is, keep it improper, because when you go to subtract, you're going to want your denominators to both be the same. So I'm just going to subtract straight across. 1,330 take away 84.8 leaves me with 1,245.2. I'm going to put that over 3 because the denominator stays the same. Pi inches cubed. And you are done. Now, of course, if they want you to go ahead and multiply the pi out, they'll tell you. But for the most part, we're just going to leave it right now in pi form. All right, let's look at exercises 1 through 5 here. So we have another cone. I'm going to kind of walk you through it one more time. Again, you want to go ahead and extend out a right triangle here, just so you can kind of see that it is a cone at one point, and then they just kind of chopped it off. So we're going to call this height x, and we're going to solve for that. Before you can solve for that, you need to set up your ratio. So A says, what is your proportion? It's going to be your two radiuses or radii on top of each other. We're going to say 6 over 12. And we're going to set that equal to our two heights, x and then x plus 4. There's your proportion. That's all you need. That is the answer for A. Now B says to go ahead and solve for just the height. Find just x. So that means we're going to cross multiply, and I get 12x equals 6 times x plus 4. That gives me 12x equals 6x plus 24. Now I'm going to go ahead and subtract 6 from both sides, and I wind up with 6x equals 24. Divide out the 6, and x equals 4. So there is my height. Now, the next one says write an expression. Now, this might be the hardest part for some of you, is how do you put this all together? Like you're good about breaking it up into small, the large, combined, but what does it look like when it's all together? So we know that we need to find the volume of both cones, the small one that's been truncated off, and then the larger one. So we know the formula is going to be 1/3 pi r squared h. So I'm going to go off my larger radius, which is 12, and I'm going to square that, and then my height is going to be that 4 plus the 4 I just found, which is going to make it 8. So this is now, I'm just going to help you out, that's my larger cone volume. I'm then going to subtract that from the smaller one, which is 1/3 pi. Its radius is 6, so it's going to be 6 squared. And the height is what I just found up above, which was 4. Oh, that's an M. There you go. That's what they mean by an expression, is how are you going to set this up to solve? Doesn't mean you have to solve it all big like this. I'm going to actually break it apart just to make it easier, so I don't have too much going on. I don't have to solve things all at the same time. I can take my time, but that's what the expression looks like. So now let's go ahead and solve it. I'm going to go and do the small one first, and I'm going to say it's written right up there. So 1/3 pi times 6 squared times 4. So I have 1/3 pi times 36 times 4. 36 times 4 gives me 144. So this is 1/3 pi times 144. Now I know 3 can't go into 144, so I'm just going to leave it 144 over 3 pi. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the large. The large, again, that's what we're going to use right there, is 1/3 pi times 12 squared times 8. So I'm going to say 1/3 pi times 144 times 8. Combine these two. 144 times 8 gives me 1,152. So we're going to say 1/3 pi times 1,152. Those don't divide, so it's just going to be as is. All right, so now I have those two sides. What am I going to do with those two numbers? I'm going to subtract them. Obviously, putting the larger one first. Denominators are the same, so they stay the same. And when you subtract that straight across, you get 1,008. Now 3 does go into 1,008. I can actually get rid of that. By the way, there's a pi there. And my final answer is 336 pi. All right, let's go to number 2. Okay, I'm going to start you off on this one, and then you guys are going to finish it up. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and extend out this top part. You're okay if you just want to make it into a right triangle, just so you know that there's actually 2 heights there. So I'll set up your proportion. Again, we're going to do radius over radius. So that's 3/24 equals x over, and now that's actually going to be x plus 30. All right, go ahead and do your cross multiply and tell me what your x comes out to. If you need to pause the video, go ahead and do so. All right, now to find the small, if you did your top portion correctly, you probably got a rounded answer. Go ahead and just round it up. You can leave it in fraction form, but I would just go ahead and round it to the decimal. So remember, you're going to use volume equals 1/3 pi r squared h. So that's 1/3 pi, this being the small one, it's going to be 3 squared, and then the h, which you should have rounded to 4.3. So make sure you show your work there. Now your large is going to be volume equals 1/3 pi r squared h. So that's 1/3 pi times 24 squared times x plus 30, which is going to give me 34.3. So you're going to solve both of those out and then subtract your final answer and give me the final answer. So if you need to pause the video, go ahead and do so. So number 3 is a little different because we're looking at a pyramid this time, not necessarily a cone. And what makes a difference is there's no circles involved. It's all squared off. So a pyramid, again, all the points would come to one point just like the cone, but we're not dealing with any circles, so we don't have to deal with pi. But we're still going to set this up as a proportion. So I'm going to say 1/5 equals this height here, which is still going to be a height. You know, let me go ahead and clean that up just 1 second there. Make it look a little bit easier to see. So we have the height here of this triangle, we'll call it x, and then this will be x plus 22. So we're going to say x over x plus 22. All right, so that's actually my answer right there for A. I was writing it to go ahead and start solving it, but they wanted you to write it for A. What is the proportion? All right, now let's go ahead and solve. I'm going to set it up for you. We're going to do 5x equals x plus 22. You go ahead and solve. Tell me what x is. That'll be one that I grade. All right, to write the expression, again, this might be a little bit more difficult, but this time it's going to be volume equals 1/3 BH. Notice there's no pi's, there's no r squareds because we're not dealing with any circles. So this will be volume equals 1/3. Now, if you look at the picture, I'm going to go back up to the picture real quick here. All right, the picture here, one thing you need to know is if halfway across is 5, the other halfway across is also 5. So this bottom is a 10 by 10. And then the top up above, all right, get that out of the way there. My top is a 1 halfway across. So this is actually 2 across. So this is a 2 by 2. So when I go to solve for my expression here, I'm going to just go ahead and erase that and start over. I'm not going to use the 5s because that's my radius. I have to use the area of the base, which is length times width. So this is going to be volume equals 1/3 length times width times height minus volume, which equals 1/3. Or I don't really need to write the volume, I guess, again. We'll just say 1/3 of the length times the width times the height of the smaller one. So what does that look like when we're done? We have 1/3, 10 by 10 by 22. But if you found that top part, it's actually going to be 27.2. We're going to subtract that from 1/3, and that's going to be 2 times 2 times 5.5. So there's my expression. So you are going to go through and solve those out like we've been doing. Solve the first one, solve the second one, subtract the answer. So you guys are going to do D. And then let's look at number 4 when you're ready. All right, so a pastry bag is a tool that's used to decorate cakes and cupcakes. Pastry bags have the form of a truncated cone when it's filled with icing. Find the volume of the pastry bag with a height of 6 inches. Large radius is of 2 inches and the small radius is 1/2 inch. So let's go ahead and set this up as a proportion. We know that we have 1/2 inch to 2 inches is some height over height plus 6. So there's my proportion. Go ahead and solve for x first. Now let's go ahead and solve this out. We have the volume equals 1/3 pi r squared h. So I'll do the first one for you. We have 1/3 pi 2 squared times 8. And this is going to be 1/3 pi times 4 times 8. And that's going to give me 32. So I'm going to say 1/3 times pi times 32, which is 32 over 3 pi. And I'm going to leave it like that for now. All right, you guys are going to find the other one, which is 1/3 pi times 5 squared times 2. Go ahead and find that answer. And then you want to go ahead and subtract those 2. Number 5 says, explain in your own words how you were able to solve this last problem. So just explain it in your own words, and that ends this video tutorial.